one of the best impressions they did there, two I'd say, were Karen Carpenter and David Cassidy, both singers. True fact, had a significant impact on my mother in her childhood when she grew up in the 70s. And it's true, she was no stranger to 70s culture, in fact. She was a toddler in the 70s, and she remembers watching a lot of episodes of The Partridge Family, as well as listening to a couple of songs of The Carpenters. The whole point about this is that it's nostalgia, right? So if you're with your parents, be thankful if they know The Partridge Family and The Carpenters, because they'll be telling you lots of stories from their childhood. So that's my experience there for you. Impersonation of David Bowie. Earlier I said he was more like Billy Idol. He was too like, oh yeah, like he was too like, oh, let's do this party. Oh yeah. Where in real life, David was like, oh, well, hello there. Nice to meet you. Shake hands, like, nice to meet you. Oh, David was really nice. He wasn't that wild, charismatic guy. Although he was charismatic fashion-wise, I'd say personality-wise, he wasn't that charismatic. He was very calm. And my sister looked at me, and she was like, he's pretty charming. And I was like, yeah, I would say he's kind of charming. She's like, kind of. I'd say he's very... So that was the biggest problem I had with this, was that the impression of David Bowie wasn't that good. Although he got his red hair correct, it still wasn't the right tone and personality. Jim, on the other hand, Jim Morrison, he walked by our chair and he like points at me. I think he knew that I was asking for a picture, and I did take a selfie with him. Now, keep in mind, these are actors, but some of these guys did such a spot-on impersonation that you would easily forget it was an act, not the real people. Buddy Holly just got the crowd going in this. I'm sorry I didn't mention that in the first video. First video, if you want to see, is in the video below. But yeah, Buddy Holly would have been amazing to watch live. I mean, he brought, the actor who played Buddy brought so much energy into the audience that they clapped, cheered, and Mom and I sang along, and we were, yeah, brings us back to when I was little. And it's true, I did listen to a little bit of Buddy Holly when I was little. Plot-wise, I mean, what couldn't be better for a plot when it came to a play? Rock and Roll Heaven. That's like the ultimate fantasy for every rock fan, such as myself. And based on the Motley Crue shirt you saw, yeah, that does make me a huge fan. Favorite part about the play, I'm gonna have to say, when they did the Beatles music, yes, they did a lot of Beatles music, I will say. And now because Ringo and Paul are still alive, they had John and George. And it's interesting because my aunt just saw Paul McCartney live, which is pretty cool. So I thought, oh, perfect timing. Now I get to see, in some ways, John and George, which was great. In this play, they did a real play on or joke with George being the Silent Beatle. And yes, for those who don't know, George was nicknamed the Silent Beatle because, well, he didn't really say much in interviews. George was a bit of a recluse. No, what am I saying? He was. But a very great writer. He wrote some of the best songs, and the fact that they made George sing a couple of his songs was a nice fitting tribute to both artists. I really wish that John and George were alive to see this, and I think they would have been proud. And I know my aunt and uncle, who are giant Beatles fans, they would have been like, yeah, that was awesome. Costumes, like, I couldn't ask anything more for costumes. The actor who played Freddie wore his trademark Live Aid suit, bright blue jeans, sneakers. And this time, instead of having like the strap on his arm, he had like this fancy belt. And I just thought, it's fine. But yeah, Freddie was our first rock and roll celebrity we meet. I mean, in chronological order, I think this is chronological order. I could be wrong. But here's what I remember seeing. There was Freddie, Janis. Oh man, they did a whole bunch. Jim Morrison, and yes, Janis Joplin. Karen Carpenter. Oh, now I'm going out of order. Now I know I'm going out of order. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra was only in there for like a cameo. He wasn't in there very long, but it was cool to watch. And interestingly enough, every time there was a introduction to our characters for like the heaven part, they would blow this fog machine and the doors would open and there they would be.